Welcome to Echoes International podcast, with teaching, interviews and stories of what God is doing straight from the mission field and also within the UK. For more podcasts, stories and opportunities to get involved, check out our website at echoesinternational.org.uk and our other social media channels.
I was told to do a timer. I usually, not because of you, because I usually do have a very hard time keeping it down. Yeah, and like it says, I've been at the Garbage Village a long time, so there's a lot to talk about. I just wanted to mention that Echoes actually supports the work of the Sudanese School that I work in. So we kind of figured that I didn't have time to talk about both of them, so I would this time talk about the Garbage Village, but we do have a really nice video of our school. So anybody who wants to talk about that afterwards, we're here. I'm here. So let's see, here we go. So when I first went to the Garbage Village in 1982, these are the kind of scenes that I saw. By the way, can you all see? I get the feeling you all can't. You can? Okay. So this is the kind of scene that I saw. It was a real garbage village. I mean, people lived on the same level as their garbage, their animals, everything. That's where they fed their kids. That's where they cooked. The men, by and large, were abusers, abused alcohol, drugs, their wives, their children. The interesting thing is that they actually were supposedly Christian. That means they weren't Muslim. But since there was no kind of church or anything up there for them, they had no idea what it really meant to be a Christian. You can see the garbage carts. They first of all gathered all the garbage from all the apartments in Cairo, and then they sorted it by hand for recycling, sometimes feeding garbage. I used to see a lot of kids eating garbage in those days. And so they thought of themselves as garbage. And this was the thing that really struck me in those early years, how much these people had no idea of their value to God or even their value to the society, tremendous value, but nobody seemed to appreciate them. And so they didn't appreciate themselves either. And since they didn't know that God loved them, now this is going back before I came, obviously, Pastor Simon, who was the one who brought the gospel to the Garbage Village. He came in 1974. That was obviously before I came, 8 years before I came. And he started telling the people about Jesus and started telling them that God loved them and started telling them that he had died for them. That's how much he loved them, and that they could give their lives to the Lord. They could give their hearts to the Lord. He would help them to change. This was a picture of him actually later on after I knew him and his wife. They came at great sacrifice, but I don't have time to tell you about that. And people started responding. Here they were, Christian in name, but had never known anything about the gospel before. So he is, by the way, he's a Coptic Orthodox priest, and it's not all Coptic Orthodox priests that really are evangelical or evangelistic, but definitely Father Simon still is, and was in those days. And like I said, people responded. They wanted a church. That was the first thing they wanted. So when I arrived, actually, there was one building in the Garbage Village, and that was the church. Other than that, there were no buildings at all. You can see this, how it's just surrounded by, basically, they were still either kind of like tin shacks or little brick buildings. So I'm going to show you, but this is going way ahead in the story, but I'm just going to show it to you, just to show you the contrast between that church building and what it is now. Looking down from the cave churches, which you'll hear about later, you can see in that circle at the very front, that's the church building. And look what it's surrounded by now. Isn't that incredible? But one of the things that I am here to tell people, and here, I'll go back just a minute. And I think it's important to have people at the Garbage Village for a long time who kind of knew what it was and what it became. One of the things about it that I am so thrilled about is that all of this was brought about by the love of the Lord, motivating, changing people, helping the men to stop abusing, therefore having some more money. Therefore, they could build themselves some little homes. Therefore, the women started being treated better. Therefore, the children also. And then the next step was they wanted a school for their children. And that was what was happening when I arrived in 1982. They were building a small school, and I helped to get involved in that. So I've done a lot of things over the years. I can't tell you. It's just been a wonderful place to be involved, really, and to see God changing things. Now, there's still a lot of garbage around. This is a garbage village. But as you can see, the trucks have replaced the donkey carts. And right now, my big problem is to get my car through the roads. Whereas when I first came, I and the pastor were the only ones that had cars there. Okay, let's stop just a minute before we go on to that. So when Father Simon first came to the Garbage Village, and especially when God showed him he wanted him to stay there, which was a big calling, as you can imagine, because he didn't live in the Garbage Village, God gave him this promise that he was going to use the garbage people to somehow influence and affect all of Cairo, maybe all of Egypt. Father Simon is a man of great faith. He believed it, but he didn't know how. He had no idea how. There were wonderful stories at the beginning of how garbage people actually, through their honesty, actually led people to the Lord because they were, for example, returning their gold watches to them and things like that they'd found in the garbage. But it got much bigger than that. And this is what Father Simon didn't know that God was going to do. But what happened is that after many, many years, they discovered that an area right above the garbage village that actually belonged to the garbage village had caves in it. And they were caves that had been filled with rubble throughout the generations and actually centuries. And through different means, different miracles, Father Simon and a group of businessmen were able to start turning these caves into churches. So the churches now, you can, if you want to see what the churches look like, just Google Cave Churches of Cairo. You'll find them. They're there. Cave Churches of Cairo. The churches have become the caves have become churches, and this whole big area right above the garbage village, but in the area owned by the garbage village, is now full of churches, and people come from all over Cairo to worship in these churches, to see them. People come like Muslims come, who don't even necessarily they don't especially want to worship in churches, but they want to see the place. It's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. And there are biblical reliefs on all the cliff walls. You can go through that place and hear the gospel from the beginning to the end, all the way to the second coming, the coming again, just by looking at all the cliffs and reading the verses in both English and Arabic. It's really quite something to see. So I'm just showing you a couple of them, just to give you an idea. Well, one of the churches had been made into a very big church. I mean, it's like it can seat like 20,000 people. And that's a picture of it from the front. That's a picture of Father Simon now. He's an old man, but he's still there serving the Lord and still there witnessing to the power of Jesus Christ to change people's lives. Here's just a few more pictures of that particular church. Now, what happened is that this church became a focal point for all Christians in Cairo. Why? Because it's the biggest church, not only in Cairo, it's the biggest church in the Middle East, this church. And it's the only place that large numbers of Christians can go to and worship and sing their hearts out, and nobody's going to tell them to be quiet. In fact, we can't even hear the call to prayer that booms out on all the mosques all over Cairo 5 times a day. It is just really beautifully kind of apart from the city, and yet it's right in the middle of the city. So that's why it collects so many Christians. And one of the things that we like to show people, because it was just such a wonderful night on 11/11/11, we had this enormous prayer meeting, and they estimate there were, during the course of the night, probably about 50,000 people came to pray and worship the Lord and ask him to intervene in the affairs of our country, because we had just gone through this revolution. Anyway, that's history. I can't go into it, but you can Google it. You can Google what happened on 11/11/11, and anyway, you can. This is just one of the songs, just to give you an idea of how precious and exciting it was. This is the verse that I love the most, or the verses, when I think about the garbage village. Brothers, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise. Not many of you were influential. Not many of you were of noble birth. In fact, none of them were. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not yet, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. And to me, that just describes the garbage village. People who believed that they were garbage, but because of the love of God in their hearts that took over their hearts, their minds, their lives, they have opened up their garbage village to the world, and people go through the garbage village in order to get to the cave churches. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But that isn't the end of my story, because after a while the Lord got me involved in different ways with the handicapped, the new, in a sense, they were to me the new despised, the new the really, really ones that were still poor and still kind of downtrodden in the garbage village. See, a lot of the garbage people have become well off, actually. They've done a wonderful job of recycling, and God has helped them, and a lot of them have become well off. But the ones that aren't well off still, and the ones that are still incredibly needy, I find are the ones who are handicapped in different ways, or disabled, or chronically ill. So anyway, through a long series of miracles, God helped us to build this building that you see here, which is now finished. It wasn't in this point. And we now serve 80 children and young people on a regular basis every day. Plus, we have an outpatient service to people in the garbage village whose kids simply need a few things like physical therapy, speech therapy. But these are some of the pictures of the 80 that we serve every day. A lot of our children have cerebral palsy, by the way. When you said that, it sounded familiar. And a lot of the women who come to us with their children come to us from outside the garbage village, being as the garbage village is still mostly Christian, but there's a lot of Muslims living around. And again, the Christians are serving the rest of Cairo, are serving the Muslims. There's nothing else for the handicapped and the disabled around. So they all come to us, and of course we welcome to them with open arms. So a lot of them are Muslims. This is vocational training, speech therapy, like I mentioned already. We have workshops for the moms. This is also a wonderful way because normally in Egypt, you don't get a whole lot of friendship between Christian and Muslim. They tend to stick to their own quarters, even in some cases, stick to their own groups. But here you've got the Muslim moms and the Christian moms all getting together to talk about their kids and how they can help them to become better. So this is a chance for outreach also. We've got a lovely playground now. It's only, until you get up to the cave churches, there's no green in the garbage village at all. There's no flowers, there's nothing, but I'm so happy that our playground has some flowers. I'm from Canada originally, and it's really great to see the green and the flowers. And anyway, so I'm basically finished with this part of the story, and by ending a little bit early, maybe you can spend some time with both of us, or either of us, if you want to, asking us questions. We do thank you for your prayers and support, both for the Sudanese School and for the Center of Love for the Disabled. Anybody who wants to sign up to get our newsletter from the Center of Love or the Sudanese School can do so, and I'm sure the same is true with you. And the Lord bless you, and thank you for giving us this chance to tell you about some of God's miracles.
We hope you're encouraged and inspired and ready to answer the call. Thank you for listening.